Welcome to Total War News. My name is Cody Bonds, and I'm bringing this story to you live from the Okefenokee Swamp because it dropped while I was on vacation, so do please excuse the frogs. Today we look at something that fundamentally changes how all Total War Warhammer 3 DLC will work moving forward. A roadmap for every Warhammer 3 related release for the next 12 months. And to be clear, this is an official roadmap. It's not accompanied by a blog post, but this picture says more than a year's worth of words ever could. In the first half of this video, we'll talk about what is on the roadmap, and in the second half, we'll speculate on what it specifically is meaning. On the far left-hand side of the map, we see patch 3.1, which will be related to fixing many of the bugs related to the recent Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs DLC. It'll also include some basic gameplay updates, as well as a Chaos Dwarfs endgame for the Immortal Empires. Those of you that have played the recent DLC will know that it has the Drill of Hashut mechanic that eventually leads to a final battle that lets you claim victory over the map. We've already seen some mods that actually port this over to the Immortal Empires campaign, and I expect CA will do something similar. Coming sometime in summer of 2023 is the Shadows of Change DLC, which will star characters from Tzeentch, Cathay, and Kislev. All future DLC will have 3 legendary lords. Turned out to be exactly correct. Moving forward for Warhammer 3, it appears that faction packs versus packs will no longer be a thing. They're calling this patch 4.0 because every time there is a major DLC release, they up their number. It will include a free legendary lord, like we saw with the Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs DLC. It will also finally add Steam achievements to the Immortal Empires campaign. There will be a race update, which you will find out in a minute is slightly different from a legacy race update, in this case referring to either Tzeentch, Cathay, or Kislev, a race from Warhammer 3. There will be general campaign AI improvements, as well as ongoing settlement battle improvements. This will be followed by patch 4.1, which, as usual, addresses many of the bugs that will be introduced in patch 4.0, as well as a few gameplay updates to make sure things are, working. In winter 2023, we will have the Thrones of Decay DLC, starring a champion of Nurgle, one for the Empire, and one for the Dwarfs. This will be patch 5.0, will again come with a free legendary lord, something called the Nemesis Crown, and race and legacy updates, meaning both Nurgle and either the Empire or Dwarfs will receive an update. Patch 5.1 will then fix anything they break, and then in spring 2024, the to-be-revealed DLC will release, which is yet to be revealed. But based on the picture in the background, you can pretty assuredly assume that at least one of the lords will be Slaanesh. This will be patch 6.0, include a free legendary hero like the other DLCs, as well as a race and legacy race update. So you can also assume there will be at least one of the races from Warhammer 1 or 2 also joining this DLC. You'll notice that beneath each one of these, we also have the "and more," implying there is more that has not been revealed here. What exactly this more is cannot be said, as it has not been positively identified for this roadmap. They then promise there is more coming in 2024 and beyond. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your 12-month DLC roadmap. It promises more Warhammer more often, but you'll also likely be paying more to get it, which is honestly about as Warhammer as it gets. Normally, I cut the broadcast off at this point and just let the facts stand as they are, but there are so many facets to this that frankly demand a bit of speculation that it wouldn't be a very good newscast if I didn't give you some kind of opinion. The biggest reveal here is definitely just how different the DLC for Warhammer 3 will look. The 3 Legendary Lord DLC pack for $25 was met with mixed reactions on release. But clearly it did well enough that the Creative Assembly has decided that this is the format they will continue to use moving forward. Based on the timings of this roadmap, it looks like we'll be getting a DLC roughly every 4 months, which isn't quite as fast as it was in previous titles, but it does bring more with it. The Chaos Dwarf endgame for Immortal Empires will likely be ported directly from the Realm of Chaos map. It works very well and it's quite fun to play, so there's no reason not to bring it there. My initial impression of all the DLC is that there are huge hints in each of the titles of these that tell you what they will be. I'll expand on my reasoning for each of these in future videos that go into the nitty-gritty of my predictions, but for now, these are my best guesses and they can kind of guide your thinking. Shadows of Change with Tzeentch as the starring lord makes sense because one of his greatest demon generals is the Changeling. It's right there in the name, folks. One of the principal demons of Tzeentch, and one of his cooler-looking ones in my opinion. He's a trickster that can take on the shape and form of anything he encounters, except Tzeentch and whatever his own original form was, because he is, after all, cursed by Tzeentch. The accompanying lords for Cathay and Kislev are also pretty likely known based on previous appearances in blogs by CA and recent lore hints. For Cathay, we'll likely see the Monkey King, either that or another dragon. But let's be honest here, people want their monkey. Even though he's never had an official miniature, he's been in the background of Cathay lore ever since its creation. So let's hope CA takes an interesting approach to him we haven't seen yet, as he is a staple of Chinese myth and literature. For Kislev, we're most likely going to see Mother Ostankaya, formerly Baba Yaga, an Ungol hag mother, which might be better known as a forest witch, who calls herself the protector of the motherland. She's part of the old magic that lives deep in the forest of Kislev and has been discussed several times by CA's resident lore expert, just like the Monkey King, and because of this is the most likely person to come up next, as frankly she's one of the very few characters we know much of anything about. Thrones of Decay is where things start to get a bit more interesting. My personal prediction for this is that the starring lord for Nurgle will be Tamarkan. His book was named Tamarkan, the Throne of Chaos after all. Drazoeth from the recent Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs DLC was taken from this book, so we know that this particular section of lore is fair game. And the Maggot Lord, Tamarkan, is a big name that is likely to draw in a lot of fans. He hoped by claiming the Imperial City of Nuln for the Chaos Gods, he would ascend the so-called Throne of Chaos and achieve apotheosis as a demon prince of Nurgle. Previously, guys like Tamarkan have gone into the Warriors of Chaos faction, as he's technically a champion that's trying to ascend. So I'm not sure how they would swing him back into the Nurgle faction here, but I mean, he does start out as a sentient Nurgle maggot that then takes over bodies, so I feel like there's wiggle room there, to say the least. For the Associated Empire DLC, there are so many ways they could go with this, but if they do go with Tamarkan, my gut says Elspeth von Draken, the Magistrix of the Amethyst Order and protector of the City of Nuln, that Tamarkan is trying to sack to prove himself to the Chaos Gods. You see the narrative link there that gives the DLC a good solid theme. Or possibly Edward Vanderkraal and his Marienburg land ship, as they also come from that same book, and the Marienburg keyword has been data mined from Warhammer 3's game files. Either way, they're both pretty cool and could bring some very interesting stuff to the game. For the Dwarfs, well, I've always been partial to a Slayer-themed DLC with some engineering goodies added on, so I hope for Malachi Makaisen. He's the one that made the blimp you see everywhere. But as all 8th edition Dwarfs are already in the game, it's honestly anyone's ballgame. Maybe it could be Joseph Bugman. I mean, hell, the Brewmaster Extraordinaire. If not, he'll at least be in as a legendary hero though, because again, he is a fan favorite. For Slaanesh, well, that's to be revealed, because it's yet to be revealed. But thanks to that pink coloring, we know it's probably a Slaaneshi lord, and probably the Mask of Slaanesh. Not least because it's a cute play on words about someone revealing what's behind their mask, and CA does love their cutesiness. The Eternal Dancer, the Accursed Maiden, the Mask of Slaanesh is the Darkling Deceiver. She was once the most favored of all the demonettes, but she was cursed by Slaanesh after he lost a war to Khorne and Nurgle and thought her dancing was mocking him. So he cursed her to dance for all time, because that's the kind of thing petty chaos gods do. For whoever accompanies the Mask of Slaanesh, I'm hoping for either Bretonnia or Norska, as they both need legacy race updates. The update for the Shadows of Change will probably go to Kislev, as their faction mechanics are a bit of a mixed bag at this point, as I've mentioned in many of my videos about them. They don't make a lot of sense for who is interacting with them, and especially if they're adding a new lord, you can't exactly have that person also vying for the throne of Kislev, as they're not particularly interested in it. For the Thrones of Decay, I would expect Nurgle's building system to get an overhaul, because while the circular building recruitment system was interesting, it is problematic to play around sometimes. And between the Empire and Dwarfs, well, we all know just how bad of a shape the Empire of Man can be in since the Immortal Empires has dropped. On Thrones of Decay, we also have the Nemesis Crown mentioned. This could just be the addition of another small multiplayer campaign in the vein of something rotten in Kislev, but it could also be something like the Sword of Cain mechanic for the elves. At some point in his career, Alaric the Mad, creator of the 12 rune fangs used by the generals of the Empire, devised a new Master Rune. And this rune would not only retain and distill the wisdom of each of its wearers, passing it on to those who followed, but give the bearer control over their own destiny. Anyone who wore it would become the master of their fate and that of his entire race. However, no metal was strong enough to accept the rune. But then he found some warpstone and used it on that, and it held. The item he created was the Nemesis Crown. But by using warpstone, he accidentally created something that drove anyone that wore it mad, and didn't distill down the destiny of those who wore it, but instead draw out even the smallest tiniest shred of evil intent and transform the wearer into a vessel for all the malice of anyone who has ever touched it. Bit of an oopsie, but you can see how it could be translated into a very cool item that gives you that infinite power with also infinite penalties attached to it. Again, very similar to the Sword of Cain mechanics, except for dwarfs and humans. Again, though, this is only speculation based on what has been said here. I'll go into more detail about what units I would expect for each of these DLC in the coming weeks, and look forward to hearing about who you think the legendary lords could be for each of these DLC in the comments below. And what do you think about this new DLC system? You'll get more lords more often, but also likely have to pay more to do it. How do you feel about that? This has been Cody Bonds, live from the Okefenokee Swamp with your Total War news. Thanks for watching.